morning. Welcome to Bloom.
Thanks.
Yeah. This is Jan Collins, maybe not better known as, but I'll say better known as my sister.
And I'll take it.
And you'll take it. Well, thanks. So sweet, right? This is why I brought her.
Do we look alike?
Yeah. Yes, but with different coloring. We won't get into
That's
that.
True.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have you here today to talk about
me.
raising preteens. So I want you to introduce your family. We've got a picture.
Okay.
And tell us a little bit
Sorry,
about
that's
them.
our latest. I said 1 point, take pictures. I'm not good at it, so take pictures. This is our latest picture. So that's Jeremy, my husband. We've been married, it'll be 20 years in July. And then Tate, my son, he's 16, he's a sophomore, and Miley is my daughter, and she is in 8th grade, 13, about to be 14.
Yeah, and so it's been fun for us. Tate and Charlie are about 7 months apart, and so they are more like brothers than cousins, I think, and it's fun to get to...
I say Tate pulls Charlie out of his shell, and Charlie keeps Tate alive.
Yeah.
That's our boys.
It's pretty true. It's pretty true. They are opposite personalities, and they have a lot of fun together.
They do.
So it's fun to have you here this morning.
Thanks.
So let's start with our question for our series, which is if you could go back to yourself as a mom, and you were about to enter this stage of kind of those 10 to 12-year-old years where a lot of things kind of start to shift.
Yeah.
What would you say to yourself?
I think just hold on. These are some hard years, but there's some awesome years. And it's just kind of, I think, entering in, just knowing, I was thinking about it, I was like, gosh, you're coming off some tired years. My son was crazy busy, and you're just tired, and you kind of want a second, right? So you're about to start shifting, though, to just some really fun, being able to converse and just, honestly, I didn't love the baby stage. I'll say it. I got freedom here years ago. The leader said, it's okay to not like the baby stage. And I was like, thank you. Because I needed I carried a lot of guilt probably with that. But you're coming into some really fun stages and where you can start talking more with your kids and really having conversations. And just like, I guess, embrace it. A friend told me, I've heard a friend say recently, she's like, move through your stages, like keep moving and don't regret, don't look back and regret, and that is of Satan, and just keep moving through those stages. So I think just kind of buckle up. It's going to be some fun years.
Yeah, I agree. It is the stages where you really start to see them becoming
people.
Becoming people who sometimes you're like, wait, did you really think of that on your own?
Right.
And then sometimes you're like, did you really think of that on your own? I mean, come on,
Yeah. So
it's back and forth to those moments. One of the things that you told me when we were talking was one of the things that you would go back and tell moms is to just have fun.
Yeah.
With your kids.
In here, like, have fun with your kids. Like, let go of, that's something too, I guess I was just, of course we want our kids to have manners and be polite and everyone think highly of them and all those things, but there's just a fine line there of, yes, there's we need to teach those things to them, but also like have fun with your kids and hold some of that loosely. And if they didn't say yes ma'am, it's okay, like, just keep working on it. I mean, I'm still with my 16-year-old, like, I'm sorry, and so it's a process, but have fun with them, because these are years, I feel like I put in here, but just big emotional years of connection to you, because they're going to start being independent, and right now you're still cool a little bit to them, and so these are like some really fun years, because I do feel like they still don't know it all, and so they don't realize that.
Yeah.
And they will relate to you, and so it's a real time. You're still a parent. You are still the parent, but to just build a relationship with your kids.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because I do think this is the time where they start to shift a little bit, and it's a process, but there's a movement of being, of them looking to you primarily for advice, for what to think about things, and they begin that shift of beginning to look towards their peers for those things. And this stage is a little bit of a mix before they move towards the teenage years of really looking more to their friends.
And I have a sweet mentor that really challenged me during this time. She's just done this with me always, but Connie Phillips, for those who know her, but so she's taught it with me just in our friendship, but she's also therefore taught me to do this with my kids, is ask questions more, like let them say what they think about things and then maybe enter in, but don't just always tell them what they should think or how they should feel. It's a really good time to let them start processing out loud, and then maybe you entering in if you need to. But
yeah, I think that's really good advice, because as we think about, we've kind of been talking about 4 areas of development: spiritual, emotional, behavioral, and relational in each stage that we've been through. And so let's talk a little bit more about kind of that emotional development in this stage.
it's a loaded one.
Yeah, it is. But I think asking questions, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Like, I even saw something the other day. I know I get in a rut with my kids of, how was school today? Fine. I mean, that's every single school day, that's the question. And I saw somebody the other day, and they said, don't ask them, how was school? Tell me something about your day. And I was like, oh, genius. Yeah. I wish I'd heard this, several years ago. But are there some other ways that you guys have encouraged kind of that emotional connection or development with your kids?
Yeah. I love to ask what was funny about your day. Like, tell me something that was funny, because my kids connect to that, and we love to laugh, and so that usually brings something,
Tate probably did something funny.
Tate, yeah, he didn't always want to tell on himself, and one thing I would be really careful here is, because I've seen some parents do this, and it just kind of breaks my heart, because don't ask your kid, like, literally, who was mean to you today? Or did anyone sit by you today at lunch? Don't create, that's a big thing in this stage, is don't create things in your kid's mind about any situation. A lot of times I'll hear moms, oh, did you hear about so-and-so was mean about so-and-so, and did you talk to your kid about it? And I'm like, no, because I'm not going to create a situation. Because I think there's topics that if you bring them up, then you're making that a big deal. You may figure out a way to ask your kid about, did anything happen at school today? Or, how's your friendship? How's it going with this? I will very often ask, like, how's your friendship with this person? And I'll kind of rotate people, so it's not always about one person. But it's a good way to just kind of have a touch point. So don't do that. Like, don't create negative situations for your kids to bring to the forefront.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
We live in a very narcissistic society, and I think, like, I just wish every parent could hear, and I know I do it too at times, but it's like, I don't want to create my kid being a victim. You know what I mean? Like, we create that for them by the way we communicate with them. And so there's so many things, it's just like, it'll work itself out. Like, you don't have to make a situation of it, and surely don't make them, I can't believe this person did this to you. No, like, let's think about, hey, well, maybe what did you do that made that person react that way? And I think that's a big thing too in this stage, is learning your kid is gonna mess up. Like, your kid is going to mess up. And so have ears for that, and have a heart for that, and a willingness to hear that, because our kids need us to champion them in that. And when they do something wrong, to, like, be able to process that with them in a loving way. And the worst thing I think we can do for them is be like, my kid would never do that. And because our kids are going to mess up.
Yeah. I think both extremes. I mean, one is, oh, my kid would never do that, and you deny.
Right.
And the other is, I heard you did this. Is that
Yes.
like being overly?
Yes. Yes.
You assume both ways.
Yes.
And assuming is where we get in trouble.
So true. But I think in these years, like, we're building that rapport with our kid of, am I going to overreact? Is my mom going to freak out when she hears this? Because if so, then your kid's not going to open up to you, you know? Or is my kid going to process with me? And you want to create a place when they say, I cut Janie's sweatshirt all up, you're like, oh, well, why'd we do that? Maybe instead of being like, what in the world, you know? And just kind of process with them. Because typically, if they're doing something like that, something's going on. And they're needing help, needing us.
Yeah.
So these are just big years because you're building that rapport with them, and the ability to communicate with them.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about friends for a second.
Yeah.
And you had an image that you sent to me of a lion, and I just want to show that. And you said you've used this with your kids, so talk about this for a minute.
If my kids said anything, they're like, what does your mom say to you all the time? I say this. I just think, again, it's this narcissistic world we live in that we are, like, we have to, this is kind of big, but we have to teach our kids to cheer other kids on. And that starts with you. That starts with you going, gosh, Sam had an amazing game today. Did you tell him that? Because we have to learn it's not all about our kid,
Yeah.
you know, being the best. And then the other thing is you're going to come across kids that are like, well, I am the best, you know, and they're super obnoxious and all those things. And I just process that with my kid. I'm like, well, his parents aren't coming alongside going, hey, let's simmer it down a little bit. And that's not his fault. And we love this kid, and we're going to cheer him on. But I always say to my kids, I'm like, hey, listen, a lion does not have to tell you it's a lion. You don't have to go tell everybody, well, I did great at this, or I made this on my test, or I beat you. You know, I mean, you can go play in the championship of the Super Bowl and the little flag football, and it's comical, you know, to watch some of the kids and the parents. And your kids are watching you, and your kids they just humbleness, you know, teaching them humbleness. But I think so much of that comes with learning to cheer other people on, that it's not all about you. And so that's just what I tell kids of, like, hey, if you're a lion, you don't have to tell anybody. Everybody will see that for themselves. So you don't have to be the one out there bumping yourself up, praising yourself. You know.
Yeah, one thing that I remember telling, maybe more so my girls, during kind of these junior high years, because I had one especially who's very black and white, very high justice, very much, I'm kind of done with her. And I'm like, okay, hold on. And I used to say, nobody gets to be an adult and looks back and says, man, I wish I could go back and be my 7th grade self or my 6th grade. So nobody, right? And so what I've tried to teach my kids in that too is, when you do have somebody who's, you know, acting immature, whether it's they're bragging about themselves all the time, or they're creating drama or dealing certain ways in relationships, I've tried to tell them, nobody goes back and says, man, that was my peak.
If it is, it's bad, right?
I mean, if it is, like, you probably don't know that person anymore. But what I've tried to tell them is give people a chance to mature as well. Like, recognize what's just immaturity in some people.
Yeah.
And because sometimes your kid's personality, and even you can write kids off in 5th or 6th or 7th grade. I mean, I know that Charlie has a friend that in the 6th grade, I was like, I do not like that kid. And now they're best friends. And so I've had to, even in myself, kind of say, you know what, okay, let's recognize some immaturity. Let's teach our kids to be wise with boundaries, wise with all those things, but also to give people a chance to grow up as well. Let's talk a little bit about spiritually at this age. I think this is, this is an age where a lot of kids who've grown up in the church, you'll hear them say, I became a Christian when I was 9 or 10, or these are years where they start processing a lot of that stuff. They start asking a lot of questions. Are there ways that you would say, hey, take advantage of these things? Here are some ways you can invest spiritually in your kids in this age.
Yeah. I think back to my kids, and it's funny because it's actually my son and he's my older one, that he wants somebody with him all the time. And bedtime, when you are so tired and you just want to say night and have a second, or I did, it was like a constant, I need to do this. And I failed so many nights. I was like, night. But go and lay in bed and process and just talk and just let them, vocalize whatever they want to vocalize, whether it's they saw a cool car today or whether it's a deep question. Another thing I wrote down was, because I do think this is spiritual, is sex, talking about sex. In 5th grade, my son, guys, our kids know so much, from commercials to TV to phones to everything else. And in 5th grade, my son, I'll just tell you real quick, a girl mom was telling me about some boys that were being ugly to her at school one day. She was eating a sucker, and they were being ugly, taking it sexual. She had no idea. So I got Tate in the car, and the car and bed, if you've never heard that, those are the 2 best places to talk, because you're both just kind of, you're not having to look each other. But I just dove right in kind of and said, hey, I heard this today, and I want to talk to you about it. And honestly, going into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to, how's this going to go? But it's so normal and natural. And for what it is, But I just talked to him about it. I was like, hey, I heard this went down. This is not for you to talk about with anyone else. But, just, hey, first off, do you know what this means? Sort of, not really. So we talked through that, as awkward as that is. But then we also talked about how it was a really neat moment, because I said, please come to me or your dad with anything. You will never get in trouble by asking what something means. It can be a bad word. It can be anything. You will never get in trouble. And I think that's really important to say to our kids, because it really did open a door. And we also said, do not Google, Lord, do not Google, please come. And it really...
Because, that's what, like, if I want to know something these days, it used to be when we were growing up, you had to go ask somebody, right? Well, now, anything you want to know,
right,
instead of having to go ask somebody, especially something that's awkward and embarrassing,
right,
and they are naive and they have no idea
right,
what's about to happen when they Google that.
Right.
And like you said, this is a spiritual issue, because you are opening the door there to a really oppressive trap,
right,
of a road of pornography, of just wrong knowledge. And I think you're right. This is the age. It feels like they're too young. It feels like they're too young. And I'm telling you, they are not. They are not.
Right. So that was just a really huge moment for us. And I think time, we've taken both of our kids on little weekend getaways to talk about that. And as cheesy as that is, I highly recommend it. I just think it's so great to open those doors and let them hear from you. And I know people just wig out about, that's so awkward. Well, I get it, but it's your kid. And enter into that awkwardness. And if you can enter into that awkwardness, then you can enter into other awkwardnesses with them, But I will every once in a while just be like, any questions you got for me? Any weird words? And sometimes I will. I'll be kind of like, yeah, I heard this the other day. What does that really mean? I kind of know, but I don't really know. And you just don't make it weird, because it's just, that's life. And if they're not hearing it from you, they're hearing it somewhere else. And half the time they're going to have it wrong.
Yes.
I can't remember what the word is one time, but Tate said something on he was playing video games, and I heard him say something, and I was like, what? And later, I was like, do you know what that means? And he was like, no. And so I told him, he's like, oh gosh, and so, I mean, just be real with them.
Yeah.
Be real with them.
Normalize talking about it. Okay, you had another thing that you sent that you said was 10 lessons that you want to instill with your kids. Tell us about this.
I just love, again, it's we have a funny story of Charlie and the pizza. I won't go into but of just how, you really do have to teach your kids everything. And
yeah, so let me give you some context. So Charlie was 9 or 10, and we took him to this little overnight baseball camp, and they played baseball all day, and then they could order pizza, and they would have it that night at 9 or 9:30 because they're all starving. And so Chuck and I went. You could go and watch him in the afternoons as parents, and we went and watched, and I asked him, I said, did you order a pizza this morning? Because I know you're going to be hungry. And he said, well, I have half of my pizza from last night left over. And I was like, oh, because they're staying in these dorms, and said, did you have where did you put it? He was like, in my room. I was like, did you have a refrigerator? No. So he was going to eat half of the pepperoni pizza from the day before that had just been sitting in the box in his room. And I was like, you can't do that. You will be sick. Everywhere. And so, they don't know.
I've just laughed and referred to that so many times of you really do have to teach them everything. But, so this is just something I love to say kind of with the kids. Y'all obviously can read it, but it's just kind of showing up and, again, just putting it out there. If you make a mistake, apologize. And y'all, there's so many times in these years I got angry with my kids. I got tired and I got frustrated and they needed to hurry or whatever. And I wasn't perfect in it by any means, but I really did try to stop and apologize. And whether that was immediately or whether it was the next day. And I think that's important because I think it's important for them to see too that you're human and we're sin-natured and we mess up too. And just to say, I'm really so sorry I did that. I was just tired, but that wasn't fair, and I apologize, and I hate how it made you feel. Yeah. Will you forgive me? And so.
Yeah, we talk a lot in here about pointing our kids past us.
Yeah.
That we don't need to shoot to be the perfect mom.
Yes.
We need to point our kids to Jesus and say, hey, we're not perfect either. We need Jesus. And by doing that, we make room for our kids to need Jesus. So how about behaviorally in this stage?
I was kind of thinking about that, and honestly, I didn't do very good here.
Okay.
If I'm really honest, my daughter's been pretty easy. My son was hard when he was little, and so those were just my years of oh my gosh, I love you, I think, because I'm supposed to, but but my kids were pretty good through these years, and so I don't feel like there was just these major things, but I'm not a structured person, which makes it real fun, but makes it real not structured. And so I am not great about, you didn't do this and we're going to take something away or whatever. But we have done it some, but I would definitely say I feel like I wish we had done better in some ways there. But I also think that, I was thinking about a little bit of that, and y'all, I have followed her lead a lot in this, but I would yell it from the mountaintops of, don't push your kids to grow up. I don't understand this society that is pushing our kids to have phones, to have social media, to have boyfriends and girlfriends, which nothing's wrong with that. But as a parent, I would say try to stay out of involvement within their social stuff. I see moms that are 5th grade, we're going to have a boyfriend and girlfriend, we're going to go on dates. I'm going to take you on dates. I don't understand that. then also just manipulating like groups and stuff. Like I just believe you need to help your kid learn to navigate that. If you've always got your hand in it, then they're not navigating that. You're navigating that. And I really am a firm believer. I mean, I would say it again and again. Again, I don't think it's wrong, just different. We didn't give our kids phones till a little bit later. My daughter still has 0 social media. My son got some a year and a half ago, maybe. And we're not just crazy, like, I don't think we're crazy about it, but we try to just really communicate with them about it. I've always said to my kids, please don't lie to me. Like, come to me and say, like, I want Instagram or whatever, and let's talk about it. Let's process that together. Don't lie to me. Don't go behind my back, you know. But I also am very honest with them of, like, here are the reasons why we're not doing that right now. So they can, I mean, you know, their little minds, they can sort of understand we're doing this because we love you. We're doing this because we see the negative effects.
Yeah, I think there's a story that Corrie ten Boom tells that I think is great for these years and even into the teenage years as well. But she talks about she's talking with her dad, and she's wanting to know kind of what is going on in their situation, and it's big and it's heavy, and they're traveling, and he sets his suitcase down, and he says, here, pick this up and carry it. And she tries, and she can't pick it up. It's too heavy for her. And he says, I'm not telling you about this issue. It's not because I don't love you or I don't trust you. It's because it's too heavy for you right now. Just like this suitcase is too heavy for you to carry. You're not strong enough yet. This issue is too much for you to carry. And so when you mention kind of pace of growing up, I think that's a huge thing. And I've seen some people do that very poorly, and have a couple of friends who have done that really well. And what I mean by that is you've got to our culture is so age advanced. I'm not sure of a better term and how to say that, but what I mean by that is what kids used to have in their late teens, now they have access to at 8, 9, 10. And if you think about that progression, you've got to have a next step, right? And so if you're giving these kids something that used to be appropriate for an 18-year-old, and now you're giving it to them at 9, then what are they going to do at 10 or 11 or 12? And one of the best examples that I have that I distinctly remember talking about with Caroline when she was, I think, 10. She got invited to this birthday party of a little girl at school. And here's what the birthday party consisted of for a 10-year-old. A limo picked them up from school. They went to Playtime Pizza. Then they went and got ice cream somewhere. And then they went one other place. I can't remember. And I was like, I talked to Caroline about it. She was like, it was so fun. It was amazing. And I said, okay, hang on. But what do you do when you turn 13? Like, you've already done it all. And so if you take that into a different arena, whether it's boyfriends and physical relationship, if you start having boyfriends when you're in the 5th grade, and there's some of that, I mean, you know, a normal 5th grader or 6th grader is going to say, yeah, I have a boyfriend. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means they completely avoid each other and do everything possible not to have any kind of interaction, you know? That's fine, but...
Right. But you as the mom, don't be feeding that. Like, creating, like, let's go on a date this weekend. I mean, it's going on, and it's a little bit mind-boggling to me, but, again, I just always say, not my road, not our road. And,
so I just think a lot in this stage, you really have to begin to be intentional about what's age appropriate for a 10-year-old. Just because we can throw a huge, you know, limo Playtime Pizza, like, what's the right progression? What gives our kids kind of an age appropriate progression? And you will have to fight against the norms of the culture because it is moving way faster than what is age appropriate.
Right.
okay, let's talk a little bit about you and Jeremy in some ways that you guys have functioned as a team, like some ways that he as a dad kind of invested in this age, or how this kind of parenting in this stage affected you guys in your marriage. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I was thinking back to this stage, and Jeremy was actually in some job changes in that, so it was a stressful time for him. And so, when your husband's stressed, they're just tired. And so, but Jeremy and I, I guess, just praise the Lord, we've always been similar thinking and just parenting and pretty much on the same page. But we do try to, I would definitely say spend some time. Well, a couple things. I think it's super important to invest in just your husband. I know you hear that all the time, and if you can go on dates, that's fantastic. But if you can't, pick up a dessert and y'all can, when the kids are down, have some time or whatever. Jeremy is a talker. I'm the non-talker of the two.
Which is crazy to me.
So,
but go ahead.
He is a communicator, and so he wants to talk. And so that served us well. We would sit around a lot and visit. And I think it's just trying to be intentional, visiting about the kids of where they are in stages and things that maybe you need to focus in on one or the other. And he's really good at that. Spending one-on-one time with them, but I think it's also one-on-one time with the kids, but I think it's also so important for your kids to see that your marriage is important. And so Jeremy and I would try to, we're going out tonight, y'all are not, and we like each other. And, I just think that's important. I would say he's my boyfriend tonight, and I'm going out with him, and y'all are staying home. And one other thing I was going to say about just marriage and family and everything is, man, Mark Henry preached the best sermon a few weeks ago about just our own-os. If you didn't hear that, you should go listen to it. But sports, and we are sports people, okay? But sports has become unbelievable. And, I was just telling somebody recently, maybe you, but I was like, I'm so thankful my kids are even as old as they are, because these littles, it's just insanity, if I'm honest, of you have to be in every sport, and you have to play year-round, and you have to, or you're going to be left behind. And guys, that's not true. It's just not. And you may feel that pressure, and I pray if you do that you find someone that's older that can speak into that, because it will absolutely drive your family bonkers. And actually seeing in a family that has some kids a little bit younger than me, and they have all their kids in 3 activities. Our rule was kind of always one activity at a time. There were always a couple weeks maybe that, practice for this one would start and they'd overlap, but one activity at a time for each kid. And it's just crazy the stress the kids are feeling. And I think kids are feeling to be perfect too, that, we're going to go play in the pros and everybody's got to be the best. And if you're not doing this training and being on this team and this team, and it is so sad to me because it is killing your family. And, so I would just say Jeremy and I really did a good job. We didn't necessarily intentionally go, we're doing a good job, but I look back and go, we did a good job of staying connected, staying on the same page. We always tried to get away once a year somewhere. That could be a cabin. It, doesn't have to be expensive, but just getting away to spend some time together to kind of communicate about where are we, where are the kids, what strengths do we feel like the kids have right now, what are some weaknesses that we really need to pour into them right now.
Yeah.
And
well, I think it's just a good reminder that when we start getting into all of those things, whether it's sports or whether it's the parties and the things that we want to give our kids, a lot of times we're doing that because we're motivated by fear.
So true.
We're motivated that our kids aren't going to make the cut, that they're going to miss out, that they're going to feel less than their peers or whatever. And so you had a couple of scriptures that you wanted to talk about this morning, and I think that's a good transition to Philippians 4, 6, and 7. And we're going to put it up there in the Message version, and it says, don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. And before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of your life.
Yeah, I just love that last part of he will come and settle us down. And it's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry the center of your life. Because, gosh, y'all, that's what drives it, is we worry. We worry about our kids. Just a couple weeks ago, my daughter, who is just not as athletic as my son, things have kind of come a little easier for him. And, of course, I just want to find something for her that she likes and to keep her active and plugged in, all those things. I do think it's important to be on a team. And, she just quit basketball about a month ago, and we were going to focus on volleyball, okay? And she's a good little player. She's not outstanding, but she's a good little player. And so we played on a little club team last year, and we went to try out for club this year. And she got in the car. Do not tell her I told you this, but she got in the car and she started crying. And she's not a crier, but she got in the car and started crying after her tryout because she just said, I had a terrible tryout. And I'm pretty like, oh, it'll be fine. And oh, it'll be fine. And then you wait for a phone call. It's the weirdest process if you haven't gone through it. But and we didn't get a call. And I started feeling like, oh, we're not going to get a call. And so the next morning I woke up, and honestly, I had a lot of mom guilt because I felt bad. I had not invested in some privates and getting to know these coaches and all these things. And so Miley got up later that day, and we processed with her, and sweet girl is like so good. She's like, oh, I'm great. I'm fine. And but I apologized to her for that. And I was like, will you please forgive me? Because I have not been focused on that for you. And she was like, Mom, it's so fine. And I think it's just so sweet to see because we've already talked about it. We're like, this is going to free us up, and we're going to have time to do this, and we're going to have time to do that. And she even said that night, because she still could have gotten a call. And she goes, I kind of hope now I don't get a call. Like, we're going to have fun. We're going to do this and that. And I just thought, bless her, and that's more me than it's her, you know. And
giving your kids some perspective.
Yes, and it was just a good reminder of like, and back to the date night thing. Like, you may be so crazy if you have several kids, especially with practices or whatever, and you have to be respectful of the team. So don't say you just bail all the time on practices, but I think it's okay, guys, to say we're not going to make practice tonight. Dad and I are going on a date. I just think you need to hear that. Like, being on this side of it, kind of going, if we had missed a couple practices, it would have been all right, you know? And,
we went down to, I don't think I told you this, but we went down to junior deputy the other night to watch our little neighbor play. And as we were walking in, the mom of a boy that Charlie played with, and so he's a senior in high school now, she was walking out because she had been down there to watch a friend play. And she was walking out, and she gave me a big hug, and we talked, and she said, can you believe we stressed over this? Mm-hmm. And we sat and watched this little 9-year-old baseball game, and I was like, oh, my gosh, like, this is crazy that we were so invested in it. And so I do think perspective and priorities is a huge thing. We could sit here and talk forever, and we're running out of time. Actually, we're
one other thing, though, I do want to say about that kind of stuff, though, is it is important to tell your kids this is not where your worth is. This is not who you are. And so in the volleyball tryout stuff, there was another mom and daughter who really struggled, cried, and nothing's wrong with that. It's fine to be emotional about it and all that. But I just was like, it's really important for us to communicate to our kids that this is not who you are. And so you are Miley, and you play volleyball, but you're not the volleyball player Miley, you know? And
I think a great way, since you said one more thing, I have one more thing to say about that. I think a great way to do that, and one of the things that I heard, it's not my own idea, but one thing that I heard and we try to do is praise your kid's character.
Yes.
So instead of saying, man, you played a great game tonight, you can say, you can even say, you've worked really hard, and the discipline that you've shown, and, you know, you've chosen practice over fun things, and you've chosen to put in this work, and it's paying off. Like, you can say that, but you can also say, you know what, I saw you being such a great encourager. tonight at the game. But praising your kid's character is a great way to do that too. Okay, one last scripture that I want to read as we close, and I think it's just a great closing. Lamentations 3:22 and 23, and it says, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness."
That's
Anything
been,
you want to say about that?
well,
as we
that's
close?
just that song, the Promises is the name of it, but it's Great is Your Faithfulness. That's kind of been, especially the week actually leading up to her volleyball tryouts, Mally and I had been playing that over and over and over, and I was just like, listen, this is where kind of the rubber meets the road. I mean, do you believe that? Do you believe that God is faithful, and his plans for us? And I just think that I would say if you don't have anybody that's ahead of you in life, I would seek that out a little bit. Pray for that. It doesn't have to be this big, I have a weekly Bible study. It doesn't have to be big. It can be lunch once a month, once every 2 months. So just someone that's ahead of you, that's, I would say, not a family member, that's just cheering you on, and can give you some perspective. And then the other thing is, I would just say, God covers y'all. And I think that's, you go, well, what have you done well? I'm like, I don't really know. But my kids are fun, and we have a good time. And are they perfect? Heck no. And are there so many things I look back and wish? I mean, I was laughing a couple days ago with my kids because there was some commercial, I think it was on Hallmark, and it was talking about traditions. And I was like, oh, I am not good at traditions. And I used to feel so guilty about that. But and Jeremy said one day, he's like, Jan, quit worrying about that. We have fun. And I was like, oh, you're right. And I just think Satan lives in our brains. And you have to stop and acknowledge that. And Miley was talking about something of feeling guilty about something. And I was like, listen, yes, that can be God working in you, but guilt is not from God. And so, yes, are there so many things I wish we had done better? Yes, but again, we've had fun and we love each other. And I think that's the biggest thing is our kids need to know is that we're here. We love y'all. We're here. We're biggest fans, and home is safe. And, create, another thing is, this is a great stage to create friendships for your kids. Have kids over, create friendships. And if one friendship is not hitting it off, that's okay. And I tell my kids too, there's something great in everybody. So spend time with them and you'll find something great in everyone. But that may not be your group, and that's okay. And because they do need to figure out friendships. Yeah. And you invest in those friends too. Love those. I was asking Tate last night. He said, yeah, there's one mom, she just doesn't like me, and I don't like that. And I was like, oh, why doesn't she like you? And so then but I thought, that's true. Love your kids' friends.
Yeah, it's a good word. We have to stop.
Okay.
But it's been so fun having you.
Well, thanks
this
for
morning.
having me.
Let me pray
pretty
for
great,
us.
isn't she?
Let me pray for us this morning, and then we're going to be dismissed. God, thank you for today, and I just thank you for Jan. It's so fun to have her as a sister, but also to watch her as a mom, raise her kids, have fun with them, and point them to you, God. And I just pray that you would go before each of us. Would you help us to be intentional in this stage with our kids? Would you just eradicate the guilt and the shame that we feel, God? And would you just help us to be a reflection of you to our kids, to our families, and to a watching world? God, we love you and praise you in Jesus' name.